Over the last few weeks, we've been rewatching the series of films that were made a few years ago of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. My oldest brother gave me the books when I was a child, and I loved reading them. I returned to the books about 20 years ago when I knew that the Lord of the Rings films were coming out, because I realised that I couldn't remember very much of the story at all. And I wanted to be able to form my own pictures in my mind before I watched the films, rather than have the way that I read be shaped by the films. As it turns out, the films are excellent and very detailed, and although some of the diversions that Tolkien takes in The Lord of the Rings had to be left out, the films do generally follow the books very closely. The casting is excellent too, and I could watch Ian McKellen and Christopher Lee in anything. Last week we were watching one of the 3 films that tells the story of The Hobbit, and I can't remember whether it happens exactly like this in the book or not. But in the film there is a conversation between Bilbo Baggins and one of the dwarves about home. This is in the first film of the trilogy. Bilbo sets out on the journey rather unwillingly. He likes his cosy home and he's miserable being away from it. He also begins the story as quite a nervous character. He is very risk averse, and the thought of being in potentially dangerous situations is frightening to him. One of the dwarves comments that all Bilbo has thought about since they set off is his soft, warm bed. Bilbo angrily declares that the dwarves don't have a home, so they don't know what he's going through. They don't know what it feels like. Then he realises what he's just said, and he's mortified. The dwarves lost their home under the mountain years ago and were dispersed across Middle-earth, wandering and never really settling anywhere. The quest, of which Bilbo is a part, is to try and reclaim their home. A bit later on, when Bilbo has become separated from the dwarves, they assume that he's left them and gone back home. Bilbo overhears this as he catches up with them, made invisible by the magic ring. He says that he hasn't gone home, and he will stick with them precisely because he has a home that he misses. He knows what home is like, and he wants them also to be able to find the place in which they belong, a place to call home. Over the last year, many of us will have contemplated home in a different way. I know people who have discovered that they're not altogether happy in their homes, and the stay-at-home message seems unbearable. I know people who feel that they're trapped or going stir-crazy because they can't go out when and where they want, or because family tensions and personality clashes seem so much more intense when you can't get away from them. I know people who live alone and who have discovered a loneliness at home that they didn't know before. For many people, home has become more than a place to return to at the end of the day or a place in which to relax. It's become workplace and schoolroom too. There's a pressure about it and about what goes on under our roofs. The words, "make yourself at home," perhaps take on a different significance. I also know many people, though, who have found that lockdown has given them a positive experience of home. Many people feel more than ever that home is a place of safety and retreat. If we're at home, we're less likely to be exposed to the coronavirus. Many families have come to appreciate each other more and to value the opportunity to spend time together. However we feel about being at home, I'm sure that we have all come to a deeper understanding of where value lies. And when we are able to mix with people again or to go out for leisure, hopefully we will all appreciate it all the more. Surely this staying at home will have changed us, even if it just makes us a little bit more grateful for things that we've taken for granted in the past. 2 quotes from St. Augustine have come to mind while I've been thinking about home, although neither of them actually mention the word home at all. The first is from a prayer. St. Augustine writes, "My soul is like a house, small for you to enter, but I pray you will enlarge it." And the second is this: "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Then, thinking about St. David's Day at the start of last week, there's also a Welsh word that came into my mind, and you'll have to forgive the pronunciation here, but the word is hiraeth, a word that doesn't easily translate into English, but is often loosely described as homesickness. But actually it means a lot more than homesickness. It expresses an intense desire or a deep longing for home. It expresses a deep bond that is felt with a place, a time, or a person, and how it feels to be apart from them. It's the cry of the whole being to return. We often describe the Christian life as a journey, an onward movement towards our heavenly home. I do like this image as it reminds me that God is always at work and that I should avoid the temptation as a Christian to sit down and think that I've arrived. There is always more that God wants to do in me and with me, and the idea of the journey helps me to keep looking to be changed. So hopefully I become a little bit more like Jesus every day. The problem with the journey image, though, is that perhaps it's easy to lose sight of the fact that as Christians we are at home in Jesus, and Jesus, by the Spirit, makes his home in us. In the last few days I've been studying 2 biblical passages that reinforce this sense of home. Both 1 John chapter 4 and John's Gospel chapter 15 talk about us abiding, or living, or dwelling, or being at home in God, and God abiding, being at home in us. How we feel about being at home in a physical sense might influence the way that we think about being at home in a spiritual sense. Is it easy or difficult to be at home? I saw a quote on a Camino group recently that says, "Returning home is the most difficult part of long-distance hiking. You have grown outside the puzzle and your piece no longer fits." While we were walking the Camino to Santiago in 2018, I longed for home and I wanted to get back as soon as I could. But I experienced this sense of not quite fitting properly as soon as I did return. If it had been possible, I would have set out again on another 500-mile walk straight away. The challenge is to allow yourself to grow so that you don't fit anymore, but then to expand and enlarge your sense of home. Or conversely, to distill your sense of home so that you know what it is at its essence and you can carry it with you anywhere. Can you cope with the idea that in the Christian life we have the comfort of knowing that our home is in Jesus, who at the same time calls us to be uncomfortable and to step out of our settled notions of what life is like? Does the idea perhaps of carrying home with us, like a snail or a tortoise, help? What is it about being at home in Jesus that we can take with us wherever we are and whatever we're doing? The words of Bilbo Baggins from the film, if not definitely from the book, spur me on in mission. And perhaps it's helpful to think of mission like this. We can often imagine mission to be something massive and scary and almost a bit distant from our day-to-day lives as Christians. But Bilbo has a point. I know what it's like to have found a home in Jesus. And because of that, I really want to help the people I know to find that home for themselves. It's not fair for me to have discovered this home, this place of love and security and acceptance and grace, and to want to keep it as my own little secret. Because I have this home, I want others to find it and know it too. And that's not to take away from the sense of journey and movement that is essential in growing in faith. Rather, isn't it easier to move and to roam when you know where you are rooted? Isn't it easier to make a journey when you know where home is? As we become more and more at home in Jesus, our horizons broaden, our boundaries expand, and our comfort zone stretches. This gives us all that we need to travel and to be at home, to step out and yet to know where we belong. However you have felt about being in your bricks and mortar home over the last year, whether you have loved it or hated it or somewhere in between, as Christians we do have another home, a place in which we are held and loved no matter what is going on around us. So come on in and make yourself at home in Jesus today.